Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're writing 3 books at once? Because this happens to me every 2 weeks. This is a video where I talk about everything I'm writing right now. I have not updated you guys personally outside of like writing vlogs and what I've been doing. This is the ultimate Rachel Writes update, plus a Q&A at the end where I answer some of your writing questions. But let's dive into it with the first thing that I'm literally writing right now, called Sunless Ground. It is my novel. It is the second book of my contemporary fantasy series, which is the 7th Virtue series. I will link a video about that series if you want to learn more about it. It's not a book that's up for publication, so I will spoil the entire plot. Ask me questions and I will tell you. And the logline is: tenuously clinging to survival and desperate to reunite, Harrison makes internal allies at the 7th Roost when Lonan escapes without him, while Reeve searches for the 4th Virtue when Darren mysteriously goes missing. So that is the vibe. It's like mystery besties, fantasy, satire, bird people vibes. I wrote 123,000 words of this book in 2024, which was really stupid. And right now I'm writing chapter 25. So the chapters are super long. I am really just trying to finish up Sunless Ground. Like, I'm not trying to focus on it that much anymore because 2025 is the year where I want to write something else, which we'll get to in a second. But most of the end is tightly plotted by virtue of literally me having so many ideas that I couldn't fit it into this book. So they, become the end of this book and then the start of the next one. And of course that means I am gearing up for book 3, which is called Safer Graves, which actually won't be my next novel. We'll talk about my next novel in like 2 minutes. I will write it for fun on the side, like if I just feel like goofing off or whatever. Really, my plan is probably to do what I've done every year with 7th Virtue and to brainstorm it sort of in July with like the world building and things like that. And then to outline it, do more like plotting stuff in October and then draft in November. Kind of that structure is what works. But I'm not going to stick myself to that if I really don't want to write it or if I want to write it sooner. But I do want to prioritize the next thing we're going to talk about, which is The Lost Gods novelization. Lost Gods is a novella that I had started at the end of 2023 and that I had written like 11,000, 10,000 words of in 2024. And one of my goals is to actually novelize it. So it's a very scary endeavor for me because it feels like my first time writing this kind of thing, because it literally is. Like, I feel like a brand new writer writing this book because I am when it comes to writing this book. But this is the summary for the novel. Still fielding the remains of 2 breakups, an aspiring painter makes a living usurping the professions of hookups he meets online. Jaded by 2010's New York City, his plan of guilt-free exploitation halts when he meets an older artist, a man whose affluence and quiet charisma enchants him, and is drawn into his world of wealth, sex, and art when he accepts an apprenticeship at his apartment studio. I can't wait for this draft to be in my hands because I feel like I'm cooking, but I don't really know what I'm cooking yet. So a lot of the task is going to be me taking a look at what I've written in Lost Gods, reverse outlining it, and then sort of constructing a plot in my mind to sort of guide me. I'm not planning on plotting the book. I just would like to know what content I already have and how I can use it for the next book. One of the things I want to do is create like a teeny tiny reading list, not a big one. I already have one. I'm reading The Line of Beauty by Ellen Hollinghurst. When I was out with Chris, whose videos you should watch, I will link in the description. She had mentioned this book to me and I was like, wait, this looks so perfect. So I have a copy of it. It is so good so far that I can only read a page at a time. If not, I'm gonna lose my shit. So that is one of the first ones. Then I want to finish up. In Tongues by Thomas Grattan, which also is one of these sort of cool, voicey, queer books. I read a good chunk of it. I just lost my hold at the library. So I probably want to reread Luster by Raven Leilani too, and that's probably it. I'm not trying to read that much before I draft. I'm just more curious to see what other people are doing and how they've approached this kind of a book before. I might reread Big Shadow by Marta Balsavich, which was one of my favorite books of all time. Highly recommend. It's published by Canadian Indie Press. I love the way that Marta goes about plotting. So also a part of this is I cannot write it unless I have a title. So I listened to the music by, she goes by different monikers, but her name is Justine Dorsey. And she's in a band called Near Tears now, and I think has another band called After. But I think she had said way back when her band name was different, that on like a radio interview that she can't write something without titling, can't write a song without titling it first. And that has really deeply stuck with me ever since. But now that's me. Like, I can't write something unless there's a title. It just doesn't feel formed in my head until there's a title. So, dear Lord, please strike a title upon me. Next and final project that I'm writing right now, that I'm kind of finished writing right now, is my short story collection. So the short story collection has undergone some exciting changes. Number one is the title. So this book used to be known as She Is Also Dead, but I recently retitled it, and I retitled it for thematic reasons. I didn't love the angle that She Is Also Dead sort of like imposed thematically onto the project, especially when it comes to short story collections. Sometimes that title is like really important at, culminating what that theme feels like or what that theme is. So I retitled it to Your Girl. So I'm really happy with that title so far. And I originally had sort of shelved this project because the plan was I was going to send it to my agent. Then we discussed and we just decided we weren't going to work on it anymore. And then she reached back out to take a look at it again. And so I have been meaning to send it for like 4 months. But I finally, after my life calmed down, I was able to get this all together for her about last week. And so the book currently sits at around 51,000 words, which is an insane accomplishment for me. All I wanted for like the last 2.5 years or so was to hit 50,000 words in this manuscript, and I hit it. I'm not putting any sort of like onus on this project. Like, I don't want to attach too much to it because it's just sort of like an experiment, I think, in my head right now. But it has 21 stories. So half of those stories, like 11 out of the 21, are published, which is nice. And of course I did, like I said, send it to my agent, which was nice. Felt so good to hit send on that email. It was kind of like a long time coming for me, and also like I think showed how much I developed as a person. The fact that I was actually able to send that email, you don't even understand. It was so important. So this is the updated summary that I wrote with this new title. Everything is about the girl. In Your Girl, girls are pushed to act on their gravest impulses, anxieties, and desires. A group of girlfriends reach their final straw at their boyfriend's so-called boyfriend parties. A photographer seeking closure visits her childhood home and takes up an apprenticeship with the traditionalist new owner. An eyebrow waxer questions her ideology on beauty standards when she opens an at-home salon. A lonely college student becomes infatuated with a J-Lo loving next-door neighbor she's never met. A woman accidentally kills her boyfriend's goldfish and plans a funeral in her guilt. Across 21 stories, girls obsess, mope, grieve, and rage. They are all your girl. I just feel really happy that I completed this book. I can say in my head, even if it changes significantly in the future, in my head, it is done. And I have been carrying this book with me since 2020. So it just feels nice. I can kind of like, I think this is my 12th or 13th. I think it's my 13th manuscript. That leads me to the Q&A portion of this video. I asked you guys to send me in some writing questions for me to answer in this video, and I've picked a few. Of course, I couldn't get to all of them. So if I missed your question, look out for the next Q&A opportunity, and I'll hopefully try to answer it then. But I thought this was such a cool question. How has your relationship with your writing changed since you first started? And what does it mean to you at this moment? That the best change that has happened to my writing in comparison to when I started is that it has not changed at all. And I know that sounds really counterproductive because I've been talking about how much I've changed, this entire video. And what I mean by that is when I started writing, I started because I just loved it and I was like obsessed with my characters and I had undiagnosed autism. So it's just sort of a place for me to have so much fun. Like, it was just as fun as watching TV. And ever since then, I'm 23 now. I started writing when I was 13. I've been chasing that feeling for 10 years, how it felt to write when I was 13. And what I'm happy about is, as much as I possibly can, I have caught that feeling again. And that is the best change that could have happened. The lack of change, or the cycling back to the point of the beginning. There were a few questions about MFA programs. So what are your thoughts on MFA programs? And this is Creative Writing Master Fine Arts programs. And would you ever go back to get your MFA? If you didn't know, I got my Bachelor of Arts in Writing technically creative writing. My degree is, though, officially in capital W writing, not creative writing. That degree was completely paid for by the university. I had an incredible scholarship that I had to work my butt off to keep. And thank God I did, because that tuition would not have been worth it. But I'm just kidding. I am grateful for the good things that I was able to take out of that experience, but I also have a lot of criticism for academia. Not necessarily about writing education, partly maybe, but mostly for academia as an institution. Theoretically, like if I had a lot of money and my tuition was paid for, like I know this is like a deeply like privileged position to come from, because I did have my tuition paid for through a scholarship that I had to work for, but I just don't feel like paying for tuition. Like I don't want to pay for the tuition out of my own money, out of anybody else's money, except for like the schools or like funding. I don't want to ever have that responsibility for tuition, because I know what it was like to not have to pay for my tuition. I kind of hold that experience like quite sacredly and appreciate sort of the financial freedom it has thus awarded me right now. And I don't want to go into debt for a creative writing degree. I experienced a lot of ableism and a lot of racism at school, and I just can't take it, like in terms of the institutional poor experiences that I had, especially on the ableism end, that I think was also then exacerbated by, racism. So I love this question next, which is, what is your favorite style of prose, both for your own writing as well as for other writers? So I think this is so interesting, because when I was 16, I would have told you The Girls by Emma Cline. Emma Cline's writing style in The Girls is the best and only valid writing style. I have since developed quite a bit, I think, as a writer in my own style. I like writing at this moment that is a little bit more straightforward. Like it's specific, it's usually concrete, but it's straightforward. It can get maybe a little bit lofty, not pretentious, but maybe, have like a commentary kind of voice to it, with like very sprawling sentences and emotionality like formed within the actual syntax. So I'm describing Garth Greenwell's writing. I love what Garth does. I have been seeing it in a lot of the work that I'm reading recently. It's sort of like this largeness of prose. How have your characters shaped your identity, and when did you realize writing was your comfort space? I think my characters are my identity. Like I have felt very strongly about them. Like I mentioned, I've been writing since I was a kid. So they have literally formed all of my teen years, all of my early 20s, and will probably continue to shape the rest of my life. So it's like impossible to just pinpoint like one thing, but they all come from like a deep like recess in me, I think. And I like that, because like I just sort of exist forever in them. When did you realize writing was your comfort space? The minute I started writing Fostered was when I realized that I love writing so much and that this is the best thing ever. So October 2nd, 2014 was when I realized. I love this question too, which is, if you could go anywhere in the world to create your perfect writing retreat, where would you go and what would your writing retreat look like? I was looking at some writing residencies actually, and it was making me really excited about the thought of going to a beautiful place and writing beautiful things. Not that that's in the cards for me anytime soon, but maybe somewhere in Scotland. I would love maybe to go to Edinburgh and write. I think it's gorgeous. But honestly, I could go anywhere in the world as long as there's like a big field and like a cabin. That's kind of the ideal place. And then this is the perfect last question to end off this video. What are your creative outlets when you're not writing? How do you refill your well? I love this question so much. I am like a very multidisciplinary person when it comes to my art. So I think for me, and something that I recommend, of course it's just a recommendation, but if you're a writer or an artist of any kind, it can be really isolating and sometimes polarizing to just have that one art form. And the reason I say that is because in my experience, when I have been upset about one art form, it is extremely useful to be able to jump into something else, like a different art form, rather than like feeling really stuck because the only way that you make art like isn't available to you, because that happens, right? At points we just don't feel at our best. So recently my creative outlets, I haven't really been doing that much. besides writing. So, despite everything I just said, I've been watching a lot of TV. My dad has been begging me to watch Yellowstone. So I'm almost done Yellowstone with him. We're going to watch like the spin-off shows too. But recently my sister convinced me. She really wanted me to watch this show called Dark on Netflix with Lewis Hoffman. It's a German show. Great. Excellent. Probably the best show I've ever seen of time travel. And then I watch Outlander, every week or whatever. Season 7 is almost done. So 2024 was a huge year of movies for me. I think I watched 85 movies. Watching a lot of things has been so helpful. Going to the movies, like creating an experience. Oh my gosh. I watched Challengers in theaters. I saw the TV Glow in theaters. I watched Queer in theaters, and I watched Baby Girl in theaters. And I think that is so creatively refreshing, the ability to just enjoy art without doing anything. Like I can just sit there and absorb all the art. But of course I do other creative things, but not exactly in place of writing. I have recently also started reading YA books that are very nostalgic to me, or that I ripped off in order to start writing myself. I have been rereading them like with my headphones and following along in the book. So listening to the audiobook, reading with my eyes, it is some of the best, most relaxing things I could ever do. So that is a huge recommendation, especially if like you're neurodivergent and you struggle with focusing on things. I really struggle to read paperbacks for that reason. And in general, like textbooks can be difficult. So it's such an indulgent process to listen to the work and then follow along with it. I feel so engaged. So that's another thing that I've been doing. But that is everything I'm working on right now. What are you working on? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to chat. But for now, I will see you guys in another video. Bye.